ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'd like to dedicate this day to members of branch who we often overlook, and that is the members of Branch 55 Legion Ladies Auxiliary, both past and present. And I'd like to give a little history of Branch 55 Legion. For those who do not know me, I am Joyce Beach. I am not a Legion member, but I have strong ties to this Legion. My father, Stanley Smith, Yes, my father, Stanley Smith, was one of the original founders of this Legion. He was a World War I veteran, a survivor of Vimy Ridge. He was wounded twice and spent his 25th birthday in France, one day before the signing of the armistice on November 11th, 1918. My father never spoke of his services overseas. But after reading the book Vimy Ridge by Canadian author Pierre Burton, I could understand why. As I read, I walked with my father every step of the way, and it was horrendous. My brother, Robert Smith, was a veteran of the Korean War. He spent 18 months in Korea, missing in action and a prisoner of war. He would only say that they were the worst 18 months of his life, as I'm sure that many other veterans would say. Fort Morion lost one of its own in the Korean War. On March 24th, 1952, Stephen Hugh McPhee, aged 22, was killed in action. In 1927, when the Veterans War movement began, the war veterans in Duncan applied for and received their charter. It became branch number 5. It was 1937 before the veterans in Fort Morion applied for their charter. These veterans, there may be some of their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren here today. Those veterans included Thomas Wadden, Peter Dovenetti, Robert Peach, David Cathcart, John Wilson, Stanley Smith, my father, Jack Morrison, William Michael McPhee, Michael Leahy, Michael McCacker, Robert Orr, Charles Shepard, Duncan Curry, Daniel McKinnon, and Reverend Fred Moore, who was the Anglican priest in Fort Morion at that time. They received their charter on September 27, 1939, and became branch number 55. They held meetings in members' homes, finally able to obtain room in what we know as the Old Orange Hall. It was the Masons' Hall. But I have no record of them beyond this. Their history is lost to us. In 1937, rumors started to circulate of unrest in Europe. Perhaps this was one reason for the World War I veterans to form Branch 55. This unrest went on for 2 years, and we all know what happened on September 3rd, 1939. Germany declared war on Great Britain. On September 10th, 1939, which was my 10th birthday, by the way, Canada joined Great Britain and declared war on Germany. Many young men and women from Fort Lorraine signed up for active duty, and many of them served overseas. 2 of them did not return, Wilfred Andrews and Tom Pendergrass. And there was also a Jim O'Day from World War I, and a cousin of mine from Birch Grove, Alan Nicholson. During this time, the wives of Legion members joined with the unit, probably the Red Cross, to knit scarves, socks, mitts, toques, and vests for those who were serving overseas. My mother, Christine Smith, was one of those wives. She would bring home a load of grey yarn, taught my 2 older sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, and me how to knit. And she only gave us a limited time to finish a project. I hated that yarn. However, I do thank her for teaching me to knit. It became a lifelong passion. During the Second World War, the World War I veterans formed what we kids knew as the Home Guard. They would patrol the village as there was a 9 p.m. siren to make sure there were no lights on anywhere at that time. There was limited electricity, so many homes were lit by kerosene lamps. And I can still hear the knock on the door and the shout, "Lights out!" In school grades 4 and 5, we had a Junior Red Cross meeting every Friday afternoon, and we were given war stamps to sell, 25 cents each. I had one family, an older gentleman and his 2 sisters, who always bought 4 stamps from me. I was pretty proud of that. After the war ended in 1945, many of the servicemen and women returned to the village and joined Branch 55. My husband, Joe Peach, although we weren't married at the time, was an Army veteran. He was a member of Branch 55 for many years, serving as Sergeant at Arms, second Vice President, and in 1999 was made an honorary member of the Legion. How many of you remember his yodel here? In 1947, the Legion members who were still meeting in the Masons' Hall discussed building a Legion Hall. In 1951, a house on the Birch Grove Road was purchased for $75. Imagine a whole house. One of H. Hopkins' trucks was used to haul it to its present location. It was renovated with a bar, a washroom, and an anteroom for the ladies to prepare a meal. A pot-bellied stove provided that. And the far end of the Legion is part of that original house. And this is when we first heard of we first learned of the First Ladies Auxiliary. They were all wives of World War I veterans. They were Mrs. Stanley Smith, my mother, Mrs. R. McCauley, Mrs. E. McDonald, Mrs. R. Rankin, Mrs. M. Peach, Mrs. M. Kavanaugh, Mrs. D. Cathcart, Mrs. M. McIntosh, Miss M. Smith, my sister, Miss E. Watt. Notice how they were all addressed as Mrs. Don't hear that anymore. Their charter was granted on May 28, 1946, by the British Empire Service League. We don't have any information of what they did or how they raised money, Did they provide the money for the Legion to purchase that house? We don't know. Their history is also lost to us. However, the next group of ladies I knew very well, as I worked with them for many years. They were all World War II veterans' wives. These members were Anna McPherson, Christine Snow, Mary Peach, Anna Wadden, Una Peach, Elizabeth Thomas, Velma Wadden, Violet Burke, Elizabeth Anders, Legion members Lena Joe Kennedy, Gladys McDonald, Mary T. McDonald, Norma Snow, and Kay McIntyre. And other helpers with this group included Amy Peach, Iola Feltmate, Elsie Green, Peters Butler, Sadie Harn, Agnes McDonald, Jean McPherson, Florence McLean, and myself. They catered to many activities from 1960 to 1990, especially during the building of this present building. For New Year's dances, they provided a cold plate dinner at a cost of $2.25. Imagine. They catered to numerous weddings, suppers, raising money for the Legion expenses and special projects, as well as providing treats for the children of the village at Christmas and Easter, something that is still being done today. Looking back over this list of auxiliary members and volunteers, those still living include Elizabeth Thomas, who will be 101 at the end of this month, Lena Giovanetti, who celebrated her 100th birthday this year, Jean Anders, who was 96, and myself, 94. One event that always stood out in my mind was a wedding reception. After the meal was over, everyone left the hall so it could be set up for a dance that would follow. The ladies were in the kitchen cleaning up, and a few Legion members were setting up the hall for the dance. Leslie Peach was sitting over there by the kitchen door, nursing a drink. When Sadie Harn came out with a pot and a wooden spoon, Anna McPherson, 2 pot lids, Christine Snow with a tin pan and a heavy spoon. They provided music while he serenaded them. We worked hard, but we had lots of fun. As an aside, I would like to add this anecdote about the official opening of the new Legion Community Center. In July of 1972, it was opened with great fanfare to a large crowd. Legion dignitaries were present, and speeches made. A dance followed with music by Pat Moore and his orchestra. A potluck supper provided by Eric Murren of Grace Bay was to be served later. The atmosphere was festive, and everyone looked forward to a good time. At one point, the orchestra struck up a popular tune, and more people than usual rushed to the floor. To everyone's shock, the floor began to buckle. It was discovered, well, there was a mad dash naturally to the sides or to the back. It was discovered that the steel supports for the floor had not been installed. As a result of this mishap, many people left the dance, but those who stayed had lots to eat. After the permanent supports were put in place, the dance took place the following week. How many of you here today were at that official opening? During that period, many sold-out dances took place on Saturday nights with some well-known orchestras of that period. Everton, the Acadians, Pat Moore, and of course our own country playboys, Melvin and Laurie Lloyd, Frank and Shelley Hooper. Those were days of many wonderful memories. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the Legion was having many ups and downs and finding themselves in financial difficulties. The Legion members called a community meeting asking for support in helping to keep this building a part of our community. Many pledges and donations were received to help with expenses because we are a caring and giving community. And we have this wonderful building, the Royal Canadian Legion / Community Centre. In recent years, in the absence of auxiliary members, volunteers from the community worked at various venues at the Legion, including the very popular dinner theaters, New Year's dances, auctions. At this time, sons and daughters of veterans joined the Legion as associate members. They brought a new era of fundraising and various activities to the Legion, including bingo, darts, country markets, and caterings. Something I missed back here. When I mentioned those of us who are still living, Lena Jonetti, I wanted to make a comment that she was the first female president of any Canadian Legion across Canada.
Wow.
And Lynn, her daughter, is carrying on the message. Today we have a group of new and younger associate members and volunteers who want to keep this Legion. Sorry, did I miss something?
No, nope, you're good.
Okay. We have a new and younger associate members and volunteers who want to keep this Legion Community Center open. We wish them every success in their endeavors as they bring new ideas and plans for the future. No one wants to lose this building, so I would ask all of you to support the work of this new generation of Legion members. And to all you new members, remember the line in that famous poem, Flanders Field, to you we throw the torch, hold it high. These are my own memories of being involved with the Legion Auxiliary and taking part in many of the activities held in this wonderful building. And yes, I'm still playing bingo. Waiting for that elusive jackpot after 20 years. Some information shared today was keeping from the book, They Shall Not Grow Old, published in 2007. Another book, published in 2005, We Shall Remember Them. It lists the names of every person, man, woman, who served in the, and is still serving in Fort Morgan, from the World War I right up to the present time. It is well worth reading because it is your heritage. We will remember them. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. And as my good friend Holly said, carry on.